Have you been anticipating this conversation?
It's been 13 days too long.
You need to make it a daily show.
Imagine that. That'd be a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah. Even the thought of making this a weekly show sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, it does. Although it seems like a lot of really popular shows are weekly.
Mm-hmm. I think we would need to branch out a bit with the podcast, though, because I don't know if there'd be enough interesting topics bubbling up every week just on the subreddit alone.
Yeah, we'd probably be scraping the bottom of the barrel a little bit, wouldn't we? I'm sure we could come up with something, though.
Have to have more people on.
Could do that. Could introduce more personal topics.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to John Gruber, the talk show, yesterday, and he only has like 3 topics, really, and he does like a 2-hour show pretty frequently, or longer.
I haven't listened to any of his shows. Is it just him?
No, he always has a guest. It's always him plus someone, and he always has well-known names. Like the latest one was Joanna Stern, yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Often has like Jason Snell and Renee Ritchie, Merlin Mann. Big names in the Apple News / podcasting sphere.
So we need to get our future guest list from his past guest list, it sounds like.
And his is also not kind of a guest list and kind of not. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a guest list, but they're repeating just on like a biannual basis.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So you become familiar with the voices, but you also don't hear them more than once a year. It's a pretty good sound.
Sounds like you need a pretty big list to rotate through then.
Yeah, he probably does. Yeah, for sure. His podcast is actually what got me into listening to podcasts.
Oh, really?
Because, yeah, I used to listen to podcasts, but like only music podcasts, which sounds really weird now. But I only listen to music shows, and I just considered podcasts a way of listening to new music. I guess it was like, there wasn't too much streaming back then. But then someone posted on Reddit, I'm pretty sure, oh, you should go and listen to the latest episode of the talk show because it sounds like the 2 hosts, and I think they were 2 permanent hosts, had a major falling out at the end. Because one of them says like, talk to you next week. And John's like, yeah, sure. Or something weird like that. So anyway, there was a little like, there's a little in podcast drama happening. And as it turned out, he didn't talk to him next week because he left the podcasting network and went out on his own. That's when I realized that there was this whole catalog of Apple News podcasts that I could listen to, and I never looked back. And yeah, so I can pretty specifically pinpoint when I started listening to talk podcasts based on that.
I don't even remember what... I mean, like, I know some of the first podcasts that I subscribed to were, like, comedy podcasts. Lots of, like, collections of YouTube videos or just funny jokes. They're mostly in the video podcast format. But actual talk shows, I think Hello Internet was probably the first one I actually listened to.
Really? Wow.
I was always a big fan of CGP Grey, and I don't even remember how I figured out he had a podcast, but at some point I tuned into that. But as far as like actual tech news podcasts, those all started after our podcast. As a matter of fact, I think you exposed me to most of the podcasts I listen to now. Because I listen pretty religiously to No Such Thing as a Fish.
Yeah,
which I definitely got from you. You've recommended ATP to me multiple times over the years, and I've just gotten to listen to them a month or 2 ago, and am enjoying that podcast quite a bit. After we had Guy on, I've kept listening to Stack Trace, and actually, I think those are probably the three main ones I cycle through now.
Speaking of Hello Internet, have you heard or noticed in the last couple of shows, there seems to be a little bit of awkwardness or antagonism between the two hosts. And we also don't get very frequent shows anymore, so I'm wondering if something's going on there.
I haven't actually listened to Hello Internet in probably at least a year.
Okay.
But I still am subscribed to them. I'm clicking into the podcast now. Oh, it looks like maybe February is the last time.
Right, so going back,
episode.
Feb, Jan, December, November, October, September, talking 2019, August, July, May. But nothing since February.
So they haven't made an episode in a long time. Wow.
I mean, they have a huge listenership as well, so if they are stopping podcasting, it's maybe something happened between the two hosts, or I don't know. It's just pure speculation.
I mean, this year's been, it's been weird for everyone. Definitely thrown schedules off. But you'd think podcasting, it's not like they were ever sitting down in the same room to record Hello Internet. So you'd think that the global pandemic wouldn't have affected it, but it does kind of line up well with when everything started going haywire.
Although, if you have time, go and listen to the last episode and see if you can detect anything that I picked up.
Okay. I'll give it a listen.
All right. But now that I've put that thought in your mind, I could be biasing you.
Yeah, probably. I've got a crazy podcasting setup going today, and it's just for you and just for the listeners that I've got this crazy arrangement.
Is this to do the speaker test or the microphone test, rather?
Yes, it is. So I've come to a conclusion after a couple weeks with my MacBook Pro.
Talking
first
the
of all,
M1.
that it's yes. So first of all, just that it's an awesome computer. I'm very happy with it. But secondly, I had mentioned on the last show that I wanted to get a computer for my kids, and I didn't think the M1 Mac Mini. I thought it was overkill for what they were going to use it for, and I thought I'd get just a cheaper used one, an Intel one now. But after sitting with my MacBook Pro for so long, I've decided that it's a good enough computer to be an all-around use for everything computer, and my podcasting iMac will be wiped and given to the kids. And I got a little excited about that, and already pulled it out of my podcasting booth and already set up I got a laptop stand with my MacBook Pro connected to my LG Ultrafine, and I got a really nice Thunderbolt docking solution plugged into the back of the monitor, so it's got my microphones and external hard drives and everything going in with a single cable setup, so I can plug it and remove my MacBook Pro. And so by all accounts, I'm ready to go with recording the podcast through my laptop from now on. But if I did that, it would mean that we couldn't do the microphone test today. So I've got my old podcasting computer, my iMac, sitting next to me on the floor, and I've got my audio interface running down to it. And so my iMac is running my voice recording software in Discord so I can talk to you. And I've got my MacBook Pro and monitor set up in front of me with the show notes, and it's ready to start recording from its just built-in microphones when we get to that point of the show.
Yeah, that sounds like a real spaghetti. Well, thank you for putting that effort in. It is greatly appreciated, and I'm sure the listeners will also appreciate it.
I think the audio is going to come out pretty good too. I've done a little playing around with it, and they are excellent microphones in this computer.
Ooh, I am quite excited. Well, with that said, if we get into the MacBook Pro topic, we could just kick off the mic test straight away if you wanted to.
Okay, let me get voice memos. Let me just do one quick check again to make sure that it's all configured correctly. I don't want to start recording and it be wrong. Okay, looks good. All right, MacBook Pro is also recording as well as my standard podcasting microphone.
All right. Say something.
I think what I'll do is, just for the duration of the MacBook Pro topic, I'll have both going, and then maybe we can figure out a way to splice the two together or switch back and forth. So actually, maybe the best thing to do is we'll just record this MacBook Pro talking section and use the MacBook Pro's microphone, and then we'll switch back to my other microphone for the other topics.
Sure, okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you have a MacBook Pro, an M1 MacBook Pro.
It is incredible. It's everything I love about Macs. I think I mentioned in the last show how much I've missed the 13-inch form factor. It was my go-to for years. My first laptop was a 2008 MacBook. That was the 1 year they did the weird MacBook, but it had the aluminum design of the MacBook Pro. And then in 2009, they said, you know what, that's a MacBook Pro too, and they just put the Pro name on it. So I had a 2008 MacBook, which was 13-inch, and then 2011 13-inch MacBook Pro. And I loved the portability and just the size. And it's incredible to go back to 13 inches now and get a performance leap over my, 2017 or 2018? 2018 MacBook Pro. That was 15 inches.
By all accounts, the performance is just off the charts. So where have you noticed it particularly?
Well, I wouldn't even say that it's the fact that anything has happened faster. It's more just that I can go from my workflow that in the past had been done on a 15-inch computer and do it now on this 13-inch computer, and it feels the same. Whereas in the past, I might have felt hang-ups. If there's one place that I've noticed and just been blown away by the computer as a whole, it's been battery life. And I put in the show notes here how many times I've charged my MacBook Pro since I unboxed it. And
That's what you mean. All right. I was wondering what that little number was.
2.5 times in 2 weeks I've charged my computer. And that is with the honeymoon phase of having a new computer, where I unboxed it, downloaded all my applications, synced all my iCloud photos and documents, and then just found any excuse in the world to use it because I'm so enamored with it. So even when I'm sitting at my desk during the day working on my Windows PC, I've got my MacBook Pro on next to me and been responding to my text messages and stuff from there just so I had an excuse to use it. It's got me into kind of my my hobby projects. I've had a program I've been working on for the better part of a year now that I originally picked up the developer transition kit to experiment with. But unfortunately, with this program I'm working on being an Electron app, Electron didn't get updated to support Apple Silicon until these official ones came out. So I'm just now being able to get back into it after 6 months, and I've been working on it for hours a day, and then YouTube videos and everything else. All that said, my screen on time has been the majority of every day for 2 weeks, and I've had to plug it in 2.5 times. So that's 100% to about 10% twice, and then I plugged it in once at 50%.
That's kind of reminiscent of like the original iPad. Do you remember the battery life on that thing?
10 hours.
Because it was 10 hours.
Yeah, that's always been the iPad's advertised battery life is 10 hours from every model.
But I remember you could go like weeks on the original iPad.
Oh yeah, standby time was over a month, yeah.
And standby time was insane. And then it was just out the window once the second iPad came out. But you're talking about actual screen on time and working with the computer and updating iCloud photo library, which
right,
like spins up the fans for like 3 days whenever I have to like turn it on again anew or something on my computer.
Yeah, and this is with a development workflow as well, so like running a Node server in the background as I'm doing my development and things like that. And it's been unbelievable. Like I've seen people say this is the battery life you expect of an iPad. It's better than the battery life I'd expect to have an iPad.
Well, that's the thing about an iPad is that it feels like it has really good battery life because like you pick it up and you watch 3 hours of video, which is just a very efficient task to do. And then you put it down and then not pick it up, later that day. And, 4 days later, you might run out of battery. So it feels like you've got a very good battery. But from all my experience, when you actually sit down with the iPad, and a keyboard and a mouse, not that they affect it, but you sit down with an iPad to do actual work, I found the battery life was actually not that great. You're looking at like 4 or 5 hours of like continuous worky work type tasks on it. So this is just on another planet compared to that.
Right. Yeah, it still feels like I see it happen in real time, but it still feels completely unbelievable that I could use a computer for a whole day, go to sleep, get up in the morning and check the battery life, and it's 75% still. So it completely changes the game for all laptops going forward.
Can you hear the screaming in the background? I'm hoping my microphone's not picking all that up.
No, I haven't heard anything.
Okay, that's good. I'm sure the microphone's picking them up. You can't hear that?
No, I can't hear anything.
Okay, that's good. This house sounds like a living hell at the moment. And they're not even in the house, I think. I'm pretty sure they're out the back.
Oh, really? I see Johannes wasn't feeling well.
Oh, neither of them are feeling well. Yeah, I've had
really?
like a 2-week nightmare, basically, living nightmare of non-sleeping, snotty, fever. Yasmin was sick, and then Johannes got sick, and now Paul's sick, and you can probably tell by my voice that it's not at 100%.
Mm-hmm. Man, that sounds rough.
Yeah, it's been rough. It's been a very testing 2 weeks.
Imagine it with 4 kids. The problem once you get to 4 kids is you have a child that gets sick, and so you're dealing with up and down all night with them, especially if they're like throwing up at night or something.
Oh, the worst, yeah.
So you got a day or two of that, and then another one gets it. And so
Yeah.
you go through all of them.
Yeah.
And by the time we get to the 4th one, the other one's been better long enough that they get sick again from the last one. And it takes a while to fully rid your house of disease when there's 6 people living in it.
Oh, man. So I think I mentioned before, but I'm one of 7 kids. I don't even remember that from when I was young, but my parents must have gone through absolute hell when we were all they never had 7 under like 18 years.
Wow.
But 5 at one point under 12, which is sounds like hell. And my mum, well, it was probably nothing for my mum because she was actually one of 12 kids, and they were all born like pretty close together, which is even crazier.
Wow.
But they did live like on a farm, so like the diseases coming in are probably not as frequently coming through the family.
Right. Yeah. Lots less traveling, exposed to fewer people in general.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that.
Anyway, back to the MacBook Pro.
So I have one question that I've posed here in the show notes. Is it too early to go all in on Apple Silicon? And I ask that.
That's a very good question.
I ask that because, as I mentioned earlier, I have every intention of giving this iMac to my kids and setting it up with their education software and some games and things like that. But that leaves me with my primary Apple computer being this MacBook Pro, and then I have a secondary fallback of the Mac Pro I built a year ago, which is a great computer, but it's a little bit of work between having to patch OS updates to get it to run on there and things like that. And I wonder if there's going to be, first of all, I wonder if I can even do that on a Apple Silicon Mac. To download and patch an operating system, you need a computer that is eligible for the upgrade. And I don't know if I try to download Big Sur or something, the installer for Big Sur to put on my Mac Pro, if I would get an ARM only installer on here and I wouldn't be able to patch it for my Mac Pro. But I don't know. So I wonder if there's going to be some workflow that I'm not thinking about or anticipating that would make me not want to surrender my only other quote-unquote modern Apple computer.
It's tricky to say. And it could be even too early to make that call. We're still in the honeymoon phase of, wow, these computers are like insanely fast, and Rosetta 2 is pretty incredible. Like, even faster. It's faster emulating Intel than Intel is.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen a couple of things that aren't compatible with it. Certainly a couple of the Adobe products aren't compatible with Rosetta 2. Someone actually posted a handy website to determine if whatever you're using is compatible.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen any massive red flags from certain industries go up just to say X does not work at all, so we're not going to be buying them. But I mean, that's got to exist. I wonder if the proponents are just, louder than the people saying that their stuff's not working at the moment. So have you had any compatibility issues yet?
No, I can't say I've tried to do anything that hasn't worked. The closest thing to an issue I've had is my preferred text editor / IDE is Visual Studio Code, and I had to download kind of their pre-release early look version that is compiled for ARM Macs. But even on a developer transition kit, I didn't have any issues with it. So I don't know. I don't think there is any issues. And I think my saving grace is that my actual worky work I have to do on a Windows PC. So
yeah, right.
There's no such thing as a bottleneck that'll hit on this computer that'll hurt me in any real way.
So I've just actually gone to that site. So it's isapplesiliconready.com, and I've gone to the list of not optimized and doesn't run on Rosetta 2 at all. So this is just, and it's a short list. It's only 12 things here. Actually, let's see how long the list is in total. 105 has been, seemingly industry-specific apps have been tested, and 12 are not working. So let me just name a couple that I actually have heard of. Avid Pro Tools, so that's an audio app.
Mm-hmm.
VirtualBox and Fusion, VMware Fusion, so they're both virtualization things.
Mm-hmm.
Autodesk Revit, I don't know what that is, but that's pretty big. Haskell, I've heard that name, I don't know what it is. And none of the others I've heard of. But right, a number of them are plugins. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Sorry.
I was going to say, ScreenFlow I'm familiar with. That's a screen recording software for Mac. But probably not as necessary anymore since Mac has a native screen recording through QuickTime added years ago.
So it's roughly 10% of the apps that do not work at all through Rosetta.
Mm-hmm.
It's not insignificant.
And they seem like things... They're the exact kind of things I would expect, like virtualization software and like system-level utilities or plugins. The things that I wouldn't necessarily expect to just work through something like Rosetta 2 because you need lower level access. So, I mean, these all make sense to me.
Actually, the list is 182, so it's about 6%. Sorry, not 10%. Yeah, it's a bit better.
Nothing that scares me away from making the leap, though.
Oh, nothing that scares you away from making the leap?
Right. I almost set up my developer transition kit as my podcasting Mac.
What, today or in the past?
Well, just when I was debating what to do with my computers and how I wanted to arrange them. Now that I've got a real production ARM computer, the developer transition kit is basically useless. So I was thinking, is there any way that I could get some use out of it and not just stick it back in its box and put it on a shelf? And I thought, well, if I just need to have the show notes up and record some audio, it should be able to do that just fine.
I'll look after it for you.
I fingers crossed that Apple does have some kind of incentivized return policy coming, because I would love to send it back and get $500 off a new Mac Mini. Because that would make this a lot easier for me trying to figure out who's getting what computers.
That would have made more sense to do already, though, because if you can already buy the M1 computers, then why wouldn't you say, all right, send them back to us and buy the real thing? Then Apple gets the DTKs back and makes a bit of money. It's just win-win, right?
I think there might be just some initial stock issues. Like if I go to Apple's website right now to buy a Mac Mini, which I just was looking at today, I won't get it here for 2 months. So they might be waiting to catch up and then be offering all these developers to send in their computers. Because I think if they would have done this alongside the launch of the Mac Mini, all the developers would get their Mac Minis reserved and there'd be none left for anyone else to buy.
If I look at the Mac Mini, I can go and pick it up today at the Apple Store. So there aren't any stock constraints here.
Really?
No.
Well, the Apple stores are all closed around me.
Let me have a look at the other two models. The MacBook Air. Yeah, pick up today.
Let me see. I'm going to jump into a Mac Mini here. Pickup is unavailable.
And MacBook Pro, same.
Okay. The difference for me is between 8 and 16 gigabytes of RAM. If I want 8 gigabytes of RAM, I can have it Friday. If I want 16 gigabytes of RAM, I'm not getting it till next year.
Wow, okay.
So maybe they have much less of the 16 gigabyte variant of the M1 chip available right now.
Right. Let me do that same test. Ordered to delay for delivery on the 17th of December.
Wow. That's still much better than what I'm seeing.
Yeah. But yeah, all right. Must be some sort of constraint just on the high memory options.
I wonder, since we're not waiting for a launch day anymore, if we both ordered the same Mac Mini today, I wonder if they would ship out of China at the same time and it would just get to you that week or two earlier because you're so much closer.
We're not that much closer, though.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I don't
Distance between.
I don't know what like Australian customs looks like. I know when you get a package coming from China and the US, at least from Apple, it usually goes to Anchorage, Alaska, and then it sits in Anchorage for a couple days if you're lucky, while customs does whatever they do with packages.
When I was tracking my iPhone 12, it went from China to Sydney first, which is kind of out of the way, and then over to Perth. So I went to the East Coast, then West Coast. But just looking at the distances from Beijing to you, it's roughly 10,000 Ks, and Beijing to me is 8,000 Ks. So there's not a lot in it.
Wow, I'm surprised that it's that's similar. Maybe I've got very incorrect visualization of the world, but I picture Australia as like right off the coast. I guess you're much farther south than I imagined from China.
I think globes and maps are deceptive when it comes to vertical distances because of the way that it curves. It compresses the distance, so it might not look like much, but it turns out to be a lot. How's that for A grade insight into globes? I'm sure the phenomenon's got a name as well. We'll call it the longitudinal compression deception phenomena.
And if this doesn't already have a name, you have to name it after yourself. This is the Van der Mosel phenomenon.
The Van der Mosel phenomenon. All right. I'll look it up later.
All right.
I want to hear about the fan and the heat in your MacBook Pro as well.
Okay. I would love to hear the fan at some point too, but as of yet, I'm not convinced it's ever turned on.
Have you tried to get it to turn on?
No, I wouldn't say that I've gone out of my way to try to get it to turn on. As a matter of fact, I know the workflow that I'm putting it through now would have turned on the fan in past MacBook Pros, but I haven't run some graphics benchmarks over and over again for 30 minutes or something. As far as thermals go, Man, this is another part where it blows me away. In this respect, it does feel just like an iPad. I can be using it to do something and sit it on my lap or pick it up after using it for hours, and it feels, room temperature. Like it's still cool metal to the touch anywhere, above the keyboard or right underneath the upper back, and you can't even tell that it's been under any kind of load.
That alone is actually making me strongly consider giving up all the things I'm holding on to with my current MacBook. Because
really?
as I go and head into summer at this point, I do get pretty ridiculously hot using my computer on my lap. It's hot enough that my 3-year-old doesn't even want to have the computer on his lap because it says it burns his legs.
Huh.
And just having like sweaty hands when you're typing on a hot laptop is not nice. Yep. Obviously,
it's the worst.
It's awful because it tends to like, maybe this is just me, but all the stuff that's on your hands, even if you have clean hands, once they get like sweaty, like it starts kind of revealing dirt that you never knew was on your hands and then putting it onto your computer. I hope it's not just me and someone can relate to this.
No,
but the end result is
understand.
As I head into summer, the computer book starts to become close to unbearably hot when you're doing any sort of normal task. And fan noise, of course, can be irritating. And the fans in Intel Macs just like kick on it. You look at it the wrong way and suddenly you've got the fan at 100% for a minute or two.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and for a company like Apple that has for its entire life been concerned about fan noise. I mean, to the point that even the Apple II was specifically designed without a fan, and it was an engineering feat in the late 70s to do that. They sure do get loud. And I think it might be a result of that disposition they have, where like, we don't want fans running for as long as possible, and then when it does have to turn on, we just got to ramp it all the way up because it's too late. So we gotta max it out.
Yeah, it goes straight to DEFCON 1. It's like 4 and 1. Wait, are they the levels? No, it's probably more than that.
Yeah.
What I've read is that you really need to put a stress on the computer for like 8 to 10 minutes before the fans kick in.
Right.
And that's why you're probably not hearing them at all. Because that's like quite a specific workload. Like you might be exporting quite a long video to do that, or benchmarking, obviously, would do it if you run it for long enough.
Long render or something like that.
Yeah, a long render. That 10 minutes of exporting audio would be a pretty long audio or a complicated piece.
I think the biggest stress test I'll be putting this computer under will be when I'm making the YouTube version of this episode. Because for the first time, I won't send the video over to my iPad for exporting. I will do it completely on this Mac, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how that goes. But that also means that the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro are even closer in performance than I expected, because early reports or guesses were that the MacBook Air without the fan would like quickly throttle itself. So that if you're doing any sort of intensive work, you probably wanted to have the Pro, because the fan would kick on fairly quickly and keep the CPU or the chip cool. But if we're talking about stressing the thing for 10 minutes before the fan is required, then you actually have to have like that specific workflow in mind to warrant the Pro. So I think the Air is going to be fine for like 99% of people that need it. And
right.
I think the real distinction is going to be people who need more than 16 gig of RAM in the end. But the current two computers or laptops must be just incredibly close.
Yeah, if you're looking at buying one of these first M1 computers, there's almost no reason to pick anything or to ever go for the Pro over the Air, unless you're me and you just want to say you have the best thing. But
I told you to see a psychologist about
that. Maybe one day. But yeah, unless you're really in love with the touch bar, or you really need 2 extra hours of battery life, the Air has almost nothing to offer over the Pro. Or the Pro has almost nothing to offer over the Air.
I'm fairly certain once we finish recording the show that I'm just going to buy an Air and let go of all the things I hold dear.
Are you saying, like, as soon as we get off the show, you're just going to jump to apple.com and order an Air?
I think, yeah, your descriptions have been pretty compelling.
All right. I will stand by a recommendation for an M1 computer 100%. I have no reservations about telling you to upgrade.
So, giving up a 15-inch screen for a 13-inch screen and the SD card slot, 2 things I hold dear as someone who does a lot of photography. You think those 2 things are a worthy sacrifice for the M1?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask. I didn't use an SD card slot enough to miss it when it was removed. As far as the screen goes, that was noticeable for me. As much as I love the form factor, going down in screen size felt a little claustrophobic at first. And you're significantly older than me, so I don't know how well this will apply to you. But if your eyes are young enough to handle it, try adjusting the scaling on your computer. Because I found once I knocked it down a notch and just everything was smaller, it felt much more comfortable to use a 13-inch screen.
I'll have you know that my eyes are 20/20, although I haven't tested. I know that you exceed 20/20 at this point.
Oh, I don't actually.
Oh, I must be misremembering that conversation we had.
Yeah, my eye surgery got me in
botched.
the ballpark of 20/20.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not perfect. It's not as good as my vision used to be with glasses.
Currently, I'm running the 15-inch screen at the setting between default and more space. So elements are one size smaller than default. But
okay.
the smaller setting is not comfortable.
Right.
I can read it, but it's not comfortable.
Let me see my display, what it's set to now. Not that these are necessarily going to be 1-to-1, because I don't know if there's different scaling options between the 2 screen sizes. My current scaling is, the one up from more space.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Okay.
Did you notice when you switch between scaling modes that it's like a click of the fingers instead of the old fade?
Mm-hmm. Although I can't say I noticed that initially. I had already played with my scaling and then saw everyone raving over how quick it happened and had to go back and repeat it for myself to fully appreciate.
Okay.
But yeah, I just can't say enough good things. There's I literally don't have a single complaint about this computer. It's everything I've ever wanted in a laptop. And I really hope the microphone is good, because there's been 30 minutes of this show recorded on my laptop's microphone now.
You're also recording on the other one though, aren't you?
No, I stopped that recording because I have full confidence.
Really?
No, I didn't. All right. Well, any more questions about the new MacBook Pro?
Just one about RAM management. Have you observed? You got the 16 gig model, so you probably haven't had any RAM constraints really. But have you noticed any swapping? And is it faster, or you just don't notice it, or you haven't had it, or you just haven't looked?
I haven't noticed any issues. I'm almost positive that I haven't put it under any kind of workload that would demand more than 16 gigabytes of RAM. So I don't necessarily know that if everything was the same, across the board, I don't think that I would be noticing any RAM issues on an Intel computer at this point either. 16 gigabytes is a minimum for me, though. I wouldn't dream of trying to do what I do with 8 gigabytes of RAM.
Okay. I have heard that the swapping is that much faster that you may not even need 16 gig of RAM if you're kind of borderline on 8.
Yeah, this was kind of touching on the last show we did too, is that with SSD speeds getting as fast as they are, yeah, the swapping happens so fast that I bet for a lot of people it wouldn't make a difference.
All right. I think that's it on the MacBook Pros then. Maybe by the next show I'll have a few observations of my own.
Man, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for someone else to share this experience of just insane battery life, if nothing else.
My only reservation is just like what's coming next, but
right,
that's something you can just hold on to forever, so perhaps I should just move past that.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat, whereas, if this is the very first ARM Mac and it's so incredible, the M1X that comes in the spring or M2 in next year is going to just be that much more amazing. But we've got computers like this already that are leaps and bounds over what I would have considered a good computer 6 months ago. It's like, what are you waiting for at that point?
So you've got iPhone updates as well in there.
This is what I'm most interested in hearing about. How have you been enjoying your 12 mini?
It is the most beautiful phone I've ever had. It is
really.
It's a work of art. One of the reservations I had about getting the black one was that I didn't really like the black on the back. When I saw it in store, first of all, and I thought, slightly better once I actually had it in my hand at home. But I've come to realize why it is as it is. Are you ready for a bit of insight?
I'm ready.
The back looks like the front when the screen's off.
Okay.
You cannot tell the difference between the two. I actually had Yasmin test me, and I could not tell the difference between the back and the front. So I think Apple might have done it on purpose like this. So it just looks so, I don't know, so confusing. No, I'm kidding.
How did you do this test?
How'd she do it?
Yeah.
I said, well, just hold your hand so that it covers the Apple logo, the cameras, and the speaker and camera array on the front. Hold your hand so it covers that, and then just put the phone behind your back, and then just like pull it out in front of me and and let me guess which side I'm looking at.
And you couldn't tell the difference.
And she did it a couple of times, and I could not detect the difference.
Wow.
Of course, when you're under direct light, then you can tell the difference, because like a direct light will let you see the screen.
Right.
But if you're in indirect light or shade, or in a dimly lit room, or even a normally lit room where there's no direct light shining on the phone, just doing it now, even in my podcasting setup room, I cannot tell the difference between the two.
And do you think that redeems the color in your eyes, or do you think that makes it more frustrating?
No, it totally redeems the color.
Okay.
I think it's great. Yeah. I mean, there are no issues telling the back from the front, because you can just either see or feel that the cameras are on the back. So
right.
It's not confusing. I was joking when I said that before. I think it adds to the elegance of the thing as a physical
feels more
object.
like just one piece of glass.
Exactly.
And how have you been finding the battery life?
It's fine. I mean, I went from the 10R, which is no slouch in the battery department, and I can't say I've noticed a difference.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That being said, I have been fairly homebound for the last 2 weeks as the sickness has ravaged the family. So maybe it is sitting on its little wireless charger more often, and maybe I've got a surprise coming for me once I return to real life. But no, by all observations so far, there are no battery life concerns at all. Also, no size concerns. I've never once used it and thought, oh, this is just like a touch cramped. I'm mistyping or anything like that. There was no like relearning period for typing. Like back a few years ago when I went from like the 10 or the 6 or whatever to the iPhone SE, the original one, I had to relearn how to type on that thing because the keyboard is just so much smaller.
Right.
But there was none of that on this size phone. It was very natural to transition from 10R to 12 mini. Man,
I haven't held one in my hand yet, but I'm still scared of the moment I do because I think I'm gonna love that form factor.
Yep. And how are you finding the Macs?
It hasn't been as bad as I was worried about.
That's good.
I got the 10S Max a couple years ago and switched it out for the regular 10S fairly quickly, like within a couple months. And I was worried I was going to feel the same way about the 12 Pro Max and find it completely unusable. And even though it's a bigger device than the 10S Max, it just doesn't feel as unruly to me. And maybe it's because I've just accepted that it's a solely two-handed phone and I have no hope of ever sending a text message with one hand unless I use that cramped keyboard option where it crams all the keys over to one side or the other. But for some reason, I just can't I can't make myself use that.
I gave that a good crack once, including on the iPad, and it's just like, it's not nice to use, is it?
No, it's not. And I think it has so much to do with muscle memory that I'd rather just stretch quite a bit on the full-sized keyboard or use two fingers than have to pay extra attention when I'm typing because the keyboard is like every key's in a slightly different place than I'm used to. But yeah, for the most part, I found it completely manageable. As a matter of fact, I've been between the phone and the computer, I've just been blown away by battery life across the board this fall.
I bet.
I don't think I'll ever need to look at a charger the same way again. This phone easily makes it through a couple days on a charge, to the point that I worry about degrading my battery, because if I go to bed with 60% battery, I don't want to put it on the charger because that's just unnecessary cycles on the battery. So I deliberately don't charge it every other night now.
You want it to live between 20 and 80 for as much of its life as possible.
Right. So I have a wireless charging stand at my desk that my phones usually sit on, just so they're always topped up during the day. I've unplugged that, so I still get the stand, but it just doesn't charge it anymore. And then I set it on its charger once every other night, and that's all I do with it.
It's very impressive.
Although I did have some issues with the charger. I think, at least in my case, with the bigger phone, MagSafe has become a real necessity for me. I've got the Nomad base station that I've been using for a year or two at this point. It's really great.
It's a charging, isn't it?
It's a large charging pad. It's got 3 coils in it. So you can set down. What I use it for is I have my Apple Watch charging on it and my AirPods and my iPhone. And after using it for a while, it's gotten to the point where I just had the coil position memorized. And it's if I set my phone on this and I line up the camera exactly with this spot, I'll charge it every time. But I found on the much bigger Pro Max, I almost can't find the charging coils at all. Like even when I pay really close attention, I'm not just throwing it on the charging pad. I, for the life of me, can't line it up. I set it down, I slide it around for a good few seconds every time still. And so I've actually laid out my MagSafe charging puck next to it so that I can connect and charge my phone. And I'll have to be moving on from the base station just because I can't get it to work.
That's interesting because I've had a similar experience with my Qi mat. Because I could chuck the 10R on there, no worries. Mm-hmm. It would charge like 99 times out of 100. But the Mini is slightly harder to get in the right spot. It's not difficult, but it's like 5 to 10% harder to put it down and have it start charging. And I thought it was just because the phone was much smaller.
Right.
So the target is smaller, but you're saying you're having the same issue with the Macs. So
I've already got the Belkin 3-in-1 MagSafe charging stand not ordered, but I'm on the mailing list for them to let me know as soon as it's available, because MagSafe apparently is going to be a necessity at this point, and I wonder if Apple's like made it deliberately harder to use other chargers.
I wouldn't be... Nah, they wouldn't have done that. Surely not.
I mean, it might not be a deliberate, but maybe accidentally, just by the fact they have to circle the coil with magnets now. The coil got a little smaller, so the target's different or something.
Yeah. Accidental in quotes.
Although MagSafe is just, by all means, blown me out of the water. I can attach my Pro Max to charging puck, and I can dangle it by the cable, and I can swing it around a fair bit, and it's not going to slide off or come disconnected. Which on its own raised my level of confidence in MagSafe. But then I put a video in the show notes just before we started the show this evening, because I saw this shared on Twitter like an hour ago. Someone who's luckily been able to get this Belkin vent mount MagSafe accessory already, and they put a Pro Max on it. And it's not just a Pro Max. It's so it's the biggest iPhone. It's Pro Max. It's in a case, and it's connected to the Belkin vent mount, and it looks completely firmly attached. And he threw something at it, and it seems to be holding well. So
I don't think that video was a good demonstration, because he throws like one thing at it. So who knows like, precisely how it hit it. Maybe it hit it dead on where the MagSafe is, like on the back of the phone. So there was no pressure applied to like a pivot point. I'd like to see more things thrown at the phone. Maybe I should tweet him. Please continue this test.
Right. So, I don't know. I'm excited about the future of MagSafe. I find myself every day Googling MagSafe accessories, hoping that someone's made something. Because now that my charging stand that I use at my work desk isn't actually a charging stand, I think it'd be cool to have some kind of like MagSafe thing I could snap my phone onto and maybe keep it a little higher, closer to eye level or something while I'm working. I don't know. I'm excited to see what people do with the technology, though.
I've been to the Apple Store like 3 times while there have been MagSafe accessories there ready to test, and I've forgotten every single time to actually go and pick one up and see how it works. But right now I'm still relatively uninterested in them. Until I can see one of those car vent mounts which actually has wireless charging built into it. At that point, I know I'll be sold, but I haven't seen any of those floating around just yet, including that Belkin one which doesn't charge. It just holds it there.
Right. Which, not a problem for anyone that has to use wired CarPlay still.
Yeah.
So, if I could get one of these Belkin vent mounts, sometime this year, I might have already ordered one. But they're also extremely back ordered. Like everything else this year, you just can't find anything right now.
The Chinese knockoffs of that Belkin will be on eBay very soon, if not already.
Man, those might be even better if they're not adhering to the MagSafe specifications. They just put some really strong magnets in there.
Yeah. Like you try and pick up your phone and it just rips the front of your dash off with it.
You're going to like rip the I don't even know what you call those. They're just going to rip your vent out of your dash.
Yeah.
So did you experience
the lock screen issues?
Yeah. Since you had a Mini.
I am not fully across what lock screen issues are. I know there are a few screen issues floating around, but what was the lock screen issue specifically? I'm sure I didn't have it, but
this might be similar to your follow-up bullet point about touch issues. The way I was reading it was specifically people with iPhone minis. The touch sensitivity on the lock screen was turned down so much or something that it was hard to swipe up to get into your phone. Which I think...
No, I've never experienced that.
Okay. Is that what you were thinking when you put the touch issue bullet point, or is that something else?
No, this is something that I haven't seen written anywhere in my own observation, but
okay.
Occasionally when I'm scrolling something and I expect that it would scroll with my thumb and it's just kind of not registered that I've done a scroll, very reminiscent of the issue I had with the iPad Pro, and a lot of people had with the iPad Pro 11-inch, I think, which Apple, I think, eventually had a repair program for, where you could do a swipe and it just doesn't register it. Now, it's nowhere near that level. And it's actually so infrequent that I'm not even sure if it's just because, my fingernail is just slightly longer than usual or something, and I'm not swiping properly. But I am just registering a very minor possible issue. But yeah, I'm not ready to make any call and say that there's a problem with the phone yet. But stay tuned. And not on the lock screen as well, by the way, just like in Safari or wherever.
Have you experienced it recently?
Yeah, it's as recent as today.
Oh, okay. So, because I know Apple had that update for the 12 mini that was supposed to address some touch sensitivity issues, but it seems like it's potentially a grounding issue. At least this lock screen one. I don't know about touch as a whole, but it was really affecting people that had both a screen protector and a case on their phone, where it wouldn't register their touches. But if they took the case off, so they were touching the metal sides, or the screen protectors, they're actually touching the screen. Either one, it could then register their touches again, which sounded like a hardware issue to me, but seems like it was also fixed by a software update. So I don't know exactly what that was, if it was really just a sensitivity level or something else.
The other issue that a lot of people are saying is the black of the screen is actually more like a grey, flickery, greeny mess. So if you're in a dark room and the screen is predominantly black, it doesn't look black as it should. And only at specific brightness levels as well, like 80 or between 20 and 80 or something like that. Everyone reports something slightly different when this happens. But I didn't have any of that with my Mini.
Yeah, I certainly haven't noticed any weird screen issues. I know I haven't seen that one specifically, but I've seen people complaining that the screens on the 12s were tending a little more green than past screens. And if that's true, it's not something that I've been able to discern on mine.
People are even saying that, if you get the screen under a bright light and then toggle the True Tone setting 4 times in a row, then the screen resets its white point or white balance. It's and also make sure you're standing on one leg and put a pinch of frog legs into your stew. But side by side, the 12 and the 10R screens are quite different, and I think I probably preferred the 10R, but also hard to say because that's the one I was used to. And now that I haven't seen the 10R for 2 weeks, I'm not looking at the 12 going, oh, that doesn't look quite right. And I think I have an eye for color as well, most of the time. So, yeah, I don't see any particular issues.
Well, yeah, historically speaking, the LCD screens are usually able to reproduce color much more accurately than the OLED ones.
That's right.
But the resolution is so much higher on your 12 mini. I'm surprised that you were pining for the 10R at any point.
Just to do with the color, not anything else to do with it.
Okay.
I did do some side-by-side video tests. So I was in a dark room and I was playing stuff. I was playing C out of TV Plus, and that difference was night and day. The 10R's LCD screen looked like just a horrible, horrible mess, especially off-axis. It looked awful compared to the 12 mini, which just looks stunning. It's just amazing to watch video on. I would pick that over my MacBook Pro any day to watch video on now. Although I did expect more to be able to see the HDR effect more. That's not. I don't really see it because C is a HDR TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had it side by side with the 10R, I could see that there was a color difference and that the color was better on the 12 mini. But I guess I think I've heard this on a few podcasts that some tech news people watched like The Last Jedi once in 4K and once at 1080p HDR, and they all said the HDR one was like far, far superior to the 4K version.
Right.
So maybe my expectations were just too high. But to me, it's not like something I would go out of my way to hunt down, a HDR version of anything.
That's been my big debate recently. Like my main television in my living room is ancient by most standards. It's like a 47-inch 720p plasma television is my main television in my house. And I keep debating whether I should spend the money to actually get like a nice big television, and I think maybe if I were to see one in person and actually compare it to what I have now, it would impress me enough to finally upgrade. But it seems like if you're going to buy, especially a television, something specifically for viewing, that HDR is more important than anything else.
So you do want HDR? So can you see the difference?
Well, I'm not really speaking for myself here.
Okay.
If I were to see them side by side, I would hope so. But that's just been my understanding in general from like screen reviews of the last 5 years, is that HDR is the most important thing.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I don't know how good HDR is on the iPhones. I mean, Apple says it's great, right? They don't even call it HDR; they call it XDR on the iPhones now because they say it's extreme dynamic range. But when your peak brightness is so much lower than what the Pro display or a television can be, how extreme can your dynamic range actually be?
That is the one area where I do notice on my phone, because as a non-Pro phone, the peak brightness of HDR content is actually way higher than just the standard peak brightness, right?
Right, yeah.
So sometimes I'm looking at it and thinking, oh, that looks good, but is it just because it's brighter? And especially when you're scrolling through like videos that you've recorded in the camera roll, and you just start playing a video, then it just amps up the brightness of the video itself, and not even like the chrome around the edges if you're in that view. And it looks incredible, but then you go and turn the screen up to maximum brightness, and actually the difference is a lot less. So it's hard to draw any concrete conclusions. I even did some video recording tests side by side with the 10R and the 12 mini. I tried to upload a few to YouTube. I'm not sure if you saw them, but they were mostly failures. Some sort of either HDR or frame rate issue that I had. They wouldn't work properly.
Yeah, I did see those videos. I think I saw both of them. And it was weird. At least your first attempt at uploading the video comparison. I think I first watched it on my 12 Pro Max, and there was some weird. I assumed it had to do with HDR. I can't even explain what happened. It's like the brightness level of the video kept jumping around, and it made it hard to tell what was going on. But then I went and watched it on my computer, which I guess the difference is that I don't have an HDR display on my computer, and that brightness level, the video skipping around, stopped happening. So I don't know if YouTube was handling the HDR weird or what was going on. Yeah,
it was a real struggle trying to get anything watchable up there. I was trying to keep the processes local on the phone for as long as possible. Like I would record on both phones and send it all to the 12, and then do it in iMovie, which should be HDR compatible, and then I would export as HDR and SDR and upload to using the YouTube app. So I thought, if anything's going to work, then that's going to work. But the end result was either, well, firstly, it would take like 24 hours to process the video sometimes, so I wasn't even sure what the result was until it went live. But then it was either like completely blown out, which is I believe an effect of recording in HDR then not displaying it in HDR, or with the right metadata or something. Or the other issue was that I would get just like bright flashes of white across the whole frame.
Right.
Even though when I was watching it on the phone itself, it was absolutely fine. So I think there was possibly an iMovie issue and also a YouTube issue combining just to make it a tricky experiment. But my conclusion in the end was that there wasn't actually much difference between iPhone 12 HDR and iPhone XR, just 4K 30.
Yeah, I wish I remember where I heard this, but that was one of the biggest critiques of this new Dolby Vision recording on the iPhone 12 is it's going to look really good on your phone, but that's the only place you're going to be able to see how good it is. And if anything, that HDR video is going to make the video as a whole look worse on regular displays. So your television, your laptop, your iPad, anywhere else, the video is going to look worse because you used HDR. So unless you just want to watch all your videos on your phone, you're better leaving it off.
Yeah, well, hopefully with this, getting into the hands of every person and their dog, that the tools will just be updated on a fairly quickly, and
right.
And YouTube will start like processing HDR into decent SDR, or displaying it in HGL, I think is what YouTube supports. I don't know.
So were you able to get your hands on a screen protector?
No, I thought I'd bought the D-brand one, but then I got an email the next day saying it's still in my cart, so I must have just misremembered that. I did trawl the local shopping centre for screen protectors, and they all were awful. So then I went to D-brand and apparently put it in my cart and then forgot about it. And I actually haven't thought about it again, so no,
okay.
Running screen protectorless at the moment.
I've been mostly happy with mine. It's great to have tempered glass screen protector again. As far as the feel, it's you can't even tell the difference between using it and using your actual phone most of the time. The one issue I have had is if you're swiping just right from the side or bottoms, it feels a little sharp because you're hitting the edge of the glass. Whereas without the screen protector, the glass would probably be completely flush with the side. So not enough to make me want to take it off, but just the little slight inconvenience about it that I was hoping that I would be completely rid of now that these phones are so squared off.
Yeah, that's making me second think if I would go back and buy one then.
I mean, I think that in the end, assuming that I'm able to tolerate it for a year, being able to take this screen protector off and have a completely immaculate, untouched screen at the 1 year mark will be worth it.
See, I actually predict that I'm going to break the screen sometime in the next 12 months. So I bought the Apple Care, the month by month version of it, which is just slightly more expensive than just buying it outright. I'm not 100% on the differences between the two. Apparently, you can just do the month by month one, like until infinity months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't read it too deeply. Maybe when it gets to year 2 or 3 or whatever, I'll actually go back and read and see what it says. But I got that impression just from the bullet points. But that's going to be my case, I think, for a little while. And then maybe I'll adopt a more conservative approach and also stick a case and a screen protector on the phone to keep it in better shape.
So, I really like the month-to-month option. Since I only keep a phone for a year at a time, it's way cheaper to do that than to pay the couple $100s up front.
For sure.
So how did your visit to the Apple Store to get your AirPods replaced go?
It went pretty well, actually. It went kind of well. So there was a small hiccup. So I took them into the Apple Store. Again, had the mask, the forehead temperature check, blah, blah, blah. Because for anyone who didn't listen to the last show, both microphones failed in my AirPods. One like 6 months ago and one the other week. But I got to the Apple Store and the genius tested both microphones, and one of them actually worked. So the one that failed 6 months ago was definitely dead, but the other one was working. So I said, well, okay, we'll just replace the left one, the one that failed 6 months ago. That was fine. Took it home, and of course, the one in the right didn't work again once I got home, even though it had worked in the Apple Store. So I booked a Genius appointment again. And then in the days following up to it, I actually worked out exactly what the issue was. It's that the microphone takes like up to 10 seconds to detect that it's being used and to switch on. So the exact test that I did in voice memos, in which I showed to the Genius, and also explains why he wouldn't have noticed it in the Apple Store. The test I did was I counted just upwards from 1. And when the microphone kicked in, I would just stop counting, pause for a few seconds, and then start counting again. And the result was you'd get like silence, 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 7, 8, 9, silence, 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 10, 11, 12. So, yeah, it was a pretty funky issue.
Oh, yeah.
But I took it in and just actually got the same Genius who replaced the Apple Watch, which is pretty cool. So me and him are on like pretty buddy terms now. And he didn't even test it. He just listened to my voice recording and then just gave me another AirPod. So now I've got 2 brand new AirPods.
Awesome.
I learned a few interesting things about AirPods though. Is that the AirPods like get the warranty or whatever the last component of the AirPods, like because it's 3 parts, left, right, and case. Whichever part you bought last is the warranty that covers all of it. So I only got the wireless charging case like 3 months ago. So he was like, yeah, well, that's the warranty that actually covers the AirPods as well now, even though they're quite a bit older.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. So that was good. And also, thank you, Australian consumer law, I now have another 2 years on these in total. And the other interesting thing I learned was that he said and I haven't verified this, but he said that the W1 chip, or W2, whatever's in them, is actually only in the left AirPod. It's not in the right. So that's how he actually explained when I went in the first time and said both mics have failed, but then the right one did work. Well, he said, well, because it's failed in the left one, that could explain why the right one didn't think it was working, but now is working. Is because all the smarts are done in the left AirPod.
Really?
I found that interesting. Yeah.
That sounds almost unbelievable to me.
Yeah. Maybe I should just go and do a quick iFixit tear down AirPods and just verify that.
Which version of the AirPods do you have?
The
first gen or
1.5s, second gen.
Okay. So that would have the H1 chip in it.
Okay, H1.
I guess that completely changes how I just don't understand how that would necessarily work. Like I can see where one AirPod would pair with the device and then it would just send the audio to both. But what if the one AirPod you put in isn't the one with the H1 chip in it? Is it still pairing with the AirPod in your case in your pocket so that it can then send the audio to the one in your ear?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think there's a difference sometimes, like when I just chuck one AirPod in my ear, which I often do just in bed because I don't want to lie on an AirPod.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the left one is more reliable at getting a pair with the phone.
Really?
Just maybe I've just been influenced now by what the guy said. I'm kind of reading the iFixit at the same time, and I can't. They don't really seem to say which AirPod they're tearing down. Maybe the comments will have it.
Oh yeah, they only take one AirPod apart. That's not helpful.
It's
the right one they're taking apart, though. Well,
is it? Okay.
You can see the R on the stem, and then they circled the W1 chip.
Okay.
I don't know.
Maybe the Genius had misinformation from somewhere.
Potentially.
Actually, I was looking at the OG AirPods teardown. Let me have a look at.
I mean, that does make sense in some respects, because it's not like your phone is pairing with 2 separate devices. It sees the AirPods as one. So if there's just one chip that's managing the communication between the two.
Yeah, again, in the AirPods 2 teardown, they take apart the right, and there is the H1 in there. I don't know. Anyway, whatever the case is, I now have 2 new AirPods with fresh new batteries. I got the new watch with a fresh new battery. I got a new phone with a fresh new battery. The only thing that's waiting for replacement is my computer at this point.
Right.
And I've spent very little on getting this all as well. So I'm quite pleased, really, with the last few months in total.
It seems like you Australians could get by with never having to buy something new and just keep getting your existing things replaced in perpetuity.
until it's completely out of date. But yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, just because the watch, it was yours, so it came from North America, and Australian consumer was happy to replace that. And my laptop as well is actually North American, and it had a service done a few months ago and had the whole top assembly replaced. No worries there.
And that means it has the new 2 years of warranty as well, right?
Yeah, possibly only on the display, though. I'm not 100% sure how it works with laptops, because they're slightly more repairable, I guess, than phones and watches and AirPods.
Right.
It might just be the repair that's covered.
So I'm curious about this note about you have Apple One calculation error.
Yeah, so when Apple One was pricing was announced, I was doing the calculation that, well, currently I'm paying $18 for Apple Music plus $15 for iCloud 2 terabytes of storage. That's $33.
Okay.
And then Apple One Family is $26. And then I was under the impression that the iCloud 2 terabyte storage would be added on top of that at a reduced rate. But now that it's actually purchasable, it turns out that the iCloud storage isn't at a reduced rate. It's just at the regular rate that you would buy it at. So I'd actually be looking at paying $41 instead of the $33, which I was expecting. So really, I'm not really getting anything that I would want. And I found out why I made this mistake originally. I refound this page on Apple's website. It's that the Australian version of the page, which explains it all, actually has US pricing for the additional iCloud storage plans. And I went back and checked it, and I checked the URL slug, and it's /au/blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But when I actually go and buy it, then it has the Australian pricing, so they still want another $15 for the 2 terabytes. So really, in the end, I'm paying, because I want the music, storage, and arcade, really, and TV's just kind of thrown in there. But I may as well just buy the 3 separately, because it would be the same price anyway, so... And I don't really want arcade. It's not... it's nice to have. And if I was paying, pennies for it, I'm happy to have it. And I have been playing a lot of The Last Campfire recently, which is a great game. I recommend it.
Okay.
But I won't be continuing once it actually comes to pay. I'm still on the 1 month trial of Apple One that you seem to get, but after this I'll be probably downgrading back.
Okay. The Last Campfire. I haven't actually looked at any of the new games that have come out basically since Apple Arcade launched.
There are a few that are getting a bit of press. The Last Campfire and what was the other one? Something to do with an eagle or something. Let's see if I still got it installed.
Was that The Pathless?
The Pathless, yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
The Pathless wasn't for me, but The Last Campfire, yeah. It's a sweet little game.
I will have to check it out.
It's a kind of like a puzzle game which doesn't rely on having a massive brain nor quick reflexes, so it suits me to a T.
All right, with that glowing recommendation, I'll download it. I find myself playing almost no games on my phone. As a matter of fact, when I was setting up my new phone, I opted not to install almost any of the games that I had on my last one because they mostly were just set unused. So right now, my games folder on my phone has the New York Times crossword, Mini Motorways, and an app called Puzzle Page, which is just more puzzles like crossword puzzles and the like. So
who was calling home an old man just 15 minutes ago?
So there's nothing wrong with liking crossword puzzles.
No, there's not. No, just there's a stereotype of people that do crosswords.
No, I haven't played many motorways recently. As a matter of fact, I downloaded it just thinking like maybe I should give it another shot because I liked it so much when it first came out. But it'd been months since I opened that app either. But I have yet to open it still since getting my iPhone. So maybe a lost cause at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't even bother. There are like day one bugs that they still haven't fixed, which is infuriating. And they've also changed the game mechanic to just make it more or less pointless to play.
Really?
I made a bitter post in the Mini Motorways subreddit about it. And a few people agreed with me.
That's too bad.
I'm an angry old man, aren't I? The post, artificial demand ramping. Why is it that 4 houses can serve as a square building for 95% of the game and then suddenly demand ramps beyond what 6 or 8 houses can provide? It feels like an artificial game-ending mechanic. Huh. That's what's happened. You can now get like super high scores, way higher than you could previously get with the exact same tactic. But then it seems like developers struggled to actually, end the game or have some sort of end game. So they've just introduced like an artificial mechanism to make you lose in the end.
They did kind of put themselves in a box with that because the actual map size of a game isn't that big. And on the Mini Motorways subreddit, I've seen people who have beat the game, quote unquote, by just every square is full and there's nowhere else to go. So the game eventually, can't supply enough cars and you lose.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So, like,
it doesn't make sense. Like, if a square building is demanding X amount of cars for like an hour already, why would it suddenly change? They need they can progress to a circular building, which is a high demand, but then after that, there are no more building types.
Right.
Yeah, anyway,
I still highly recommend Mini Metro, which I enjoyed for a lot longer than I did Mini Motorways.
Okay. I gave it a shot. I didn't quite get as hooked as with Mini Motorways, but it is a non-Apple arcade game, so it's got that going for it.
Right.
Which sounds weird, but yeah. Onto actual topics. We've just got the two, which we'll probably get through them pretty quickly, but the biggest one is that Apple has cut their commission to 15% for many developers with that small business program. So, I mean, there are a few asterisks and stars and things, and what are they called? Carrots to this, but if a developer is making under $1 million in revenue, I believe, not profit, revenue, then they only pay 15% of that to Apple. So a lot of happy developers. And I think I said in the show when we were talking about the whole Epic saga that 30% was just too high a price to ask. So I'm pretty happy that they've addressed that head on and taken my suggestion to heart, because I'm pretty sure they do listen to this show, and just reduced it. But at the same time, like giving Epic the middle finger by having it not affect them at all.
a genius move by Apple. This gets them the goodwill of the large majority of developers who publish apps in the App Store, while making a very, very small dent in their actual take-home. Yeah, because most of Apple's profits come from companies that make over $1 million. And of course, up to this point, Epic has been positioning themselves as, we're doing this, for the betterment of all the small guys who don't have a voice and can't do this, and put Apple in this position. And this really blows a hole in their argument now, because to continue fighting at this point is to admit that it's more for them than anything else.
There were some concerns about how it all works, as in, like, if you suddenly go from $999,909 to $1,001, how it kicks in and stuff. But I didn't go and read the fine print Did you get a good understanding of how it all works?
Well, first of all, Apple said they were going to release all the fine details of how the plan works in the beginning of December. So we don't actually know exactly yet. There are some weird caveats or from people's initial understanding of what Apple's said. So first of all, it doesn't apply to everyone. Like automatically, you have to opt into this. You have to request the lower rate, and Apple has to approve you. And your first $1 million you make in a year will get the 15% commission. So it's not if you make $1,001, suddenly you have to pay 30% on all that money you've made. It's just everything past that million is at the 30% rate.
Right. Okay. So it's like a threshold, like a
Right.
tax threshold.
What seems like a complicating factor of that is that if you pass that threshold 1 year, then you're automatically at the 30% for the next year. It doesn't restart every year. You have to make less than $1 million the year prior to qualify for the 15% in the next year, which means that if you're in a position where your app is right on the threshold there and you're going to pass the $1 million mark in December or something, you could be better off giving your app away for the rest of the year so you don't make any more money and can continue to just take that 15% the next year. Which seems like it could potentially be a misunderstanding or something that Apple needs to iron out, because to disincentivize people from continuing to make money just because they're right on some border seems counterintuitive.
But if you missed out, if you missed out, you'd only be paying the 30% on the money you make over $1 million anyway. So it's potentially not going to be a huge
But then the next
amount.
year, you automatically get charged at 30% from your first dollar.
From the first
So if you're going to make about $1 million
okay.
1 year and you anticipate to make a similar amount the next year, the difference between that second year being charged that 15 or 30% for the whole year. So if you're really close, like you're at 999 halfway through December, you want to give your app away for free, so you get the 15% the next year instead of from your first dollar getting 30%.
All right. We'll talk more when the T's and C's come out, hey? Which is probably by the next show. It's going to be early December.
So, but yeah, I imagine things like that'll get ironed out.
So the last post we have is a post from 2014.
Mm-hmm.
24th of November 2014. That's actually today for you. Predict the iPhone in 2020. What do you think we'll have by then? Very interesting. I didn't get a chance to read a lot of it yet. But besides the highest comment, which is 1 GB of RAM, which is just like a funny comment. Haha, good one. But the next one is from Friar Nurgle. And a lot of his points are pretty good. Or predictions are pretty good.
Okay.
So I thought we could just go through them. So the first one is long-range wireless charging. So that just doesn't exist as a thing yet, does it?
There were rumors around the time this post was made, 2014, iPhone 6 time, that Apple had been experimenting with some truly wireless charging. I don't know what you'd call long range, but from like a couple feet at least. Now, I don't know if that was just not true or if they just never got anywhere with it, but I can see why that was a bullet point he made, because that was definitely being talked about at the time.
Okay, right. But there's nothing on the market yet that comes even close to wireless charging, even
Right.
like a few centimeters away. So 0 points for that, if you want to score it. But ultra thin and durable. So the first part, ultra thin. Well, it is ultra thin, but coming from an era when the 6 was the current phone, it's not really ultra thin compared to that. So yeah, hard to give a point for that. But durable, and with the parentheses of new design and high-tech materials components. New design, if you put that in quotes, I guess. And high-tech materials and components, well, the ceramic shield would qualify for that description. So I think that's a good half a point
that.
for that. Same screen sizes as 6 and 6 Plus. Well, basically, yes. We have an array of screen sizes, and they're on either side of 6 and 6 Plus. No buttons bezels. We've had that for a little while now. Touch ID built into screen.
It says here that volume and lock buttons will also be replaced with touch-sensitive frame of the phone. So not quite, but as far as the front of the phone being button and mostly bezel-less free, I think he's at least on the right track there.
Yeah. Instant Siri assistant, always listening. I was actually surprised that didn't exist, because that would have come with the 6. So that came like the very next year. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was a pretty good prediction. Ability to use devices, government state issued ID, completely replace wallet. Well, I think you can say it's completely replaced the wallet for a lot of people, although not really in the realm of government and state issued IDs, more in the realm of credit cards and bus passes and loyalty cards and the rest of it. So everything but the thing that you specifically mentioned,
there is some
replaced.
countries in Europe that have the ability to do that have like countrywide identification application that puts an ID card in Apple Wallet. So not fully, but it exists.
Very cool. An Ultra Retina display. So the iPhone 6 had a 326 ppi display, and the 12 mini has 476 ppi, and the other 12s have 460. So I guess, yes, it does have an Ultra Retina display.
Right, yeah. What does Apple call the screen now on this? The Retina display, XDR or something? I would say Extreme Retina display is close enough to Ultra Retina display.
Yep. Processing graphical power equal to current MacBook Air or even MacBook Pro. Now that one is a slam dunk, isn't it? Because I don't think it was on people's minds when the iPhone 6 was around that these phones were going to start to outperform computers. But it was like maybe a twinkle in someone's eye in the Apple Silicon team.
Yeah, but it definitely wasn't at the point where people were raving about the iPhones being faster than the MacBooks. So this is some real forward thinking here. Yeah,
6 years out and we're exactly there.
Yeah, 6 years almost to the nose when this comment being made. The first Apple computers with basically iPhone chips in them come out.
64 gig, 128 gig, and 256 gig as the storage tiers. So they all exist, but you can go higher.
Right. Yeah, just throwing a 512 on there.
So a fairly conservative estimate. Large front and back camera improvements. It's hard to give a point to that because just saying improvements, that's a given year after year.
Right. Yep.
Many people will be able to use their use it as their home computer with wireless connectivity for peripherals and displays. We're not quite there. I don't think Apple is angling there. The iPad is that device for Apple.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess. You can connect a keyboard and mouse to the iPhone, so I guess kind of.
And then if you AirPlay that to screen to an Apple TV, you could have yourself a computer. It's doable. Built only using robots and automation. No, I don't think you get a point for that. And non-serviceable. Well, basically. Although it's about as non-serviceable as the iPhone 6 was. Maybe slightly less, though.
I don't think it's gotten significantly harder. As a matter of fact, I think up until that point of the iPhone 6, iPhones had been getting easier to fix.
Right, from the 4, which was a disaster.
Right. Or, I mean, yeah, and even the 4, which at least you could theoretically take it apart, and it wasn't like an original iPhone or something that's glued together. So people give Apple a lot of flack, but I think for the most part, iPhones are actually fairly serviceable.
Yeah, so those were all of the predictions from Fryer Nurgle from 6 years ago today. I think they did an excellent job.
There's a handful of really excellent predictions sprinkled in here with some ridiculous stuff. I wish I could find it again. I was scanning this earlier. Someone mentioned something about a dual optical camera system, which we blew past. Now we're to triple optics. So that was kind of cool to see. Someone had a comment about the iPhone was just going to become this slab of glass companion accessory to your watch and earbuds, which I wouldn't necessarily call the iPhone a companion to the Apple Watch. It's more the other way. But you could definitely get by entirely with a watch and the AirPods now and only use the phone for those specific tasks, switching to screen. There was a great prediction in here. I found this one by Redditor 9000. He said the iPhone will have a variable resistant pressure touchscreen like the Apple Watch, which the iPhone got and lost before 2020.
Oh, gold.
So, someone mentioned something about your iPhone being your computer, and their laptops will just be shells that you slot your phone into when you want to use a desktop experience.
Yeah, Samsung's tried to do that for a few years now, and
yeah, they're still
no one has really adopted it.
Yeah. Someone said something about it being completely water resistant, where you could submerge it for days. And I mean, I guess that is true. There's been plenty of tests where people left phones underwater for days and it's been fine.
Yeah.
This comment goes on to say 3 days worth of battery, which if I was really conservative with my phone, I could get to that point. So not entirely unreasonable. Their next point is a DSLR camera. Which I actually don't know what exactly it would take for a camera to be considered a DSLR, but I'm sure that the iPhone is not that.
Well, to be considered a DSLR, I would have to have a mirror in there that flipped up and down and an optical viewfinder. So I get, I see their point is just like a big camera.
I see. Okay. Someone very jokingly, because this was just a couple months after the iPhone 6 came out, said it bends. But we are right on the cusp of folding phones, so that wasn't entirely an unreasonable comment to make at this point.
Yep.
What I'm curious about is, what do you think the iPhone will look like 6 more years in the future?
Ooh. Oh, man, you really caught me here. I haven't even started to think about it.
I give it a
camera
little
improvements.
It'll be generally improved.
Let me think about it for next show. But
okay.
Do you have someone now?
Yeah, I've got a couple ideas. I think 6 years from now, I think we'll have a folding iPhone. I'm not convinced it'll be the only iPhone. I think that we could have as like a standard slab form factor phone and maybe a folding variant. Maybe it's not even an iPhone. Maybe it's its own category that's like somewhere between iPad and iPhone. 6 years from now, though, Apple Glass will be a thing. I think we're only a year or two out from seeing those. I think by all accounts, as of a year ago, we were going to see them next year, but who knows if that's still the case, and then with the state of the world, who knows. But I think we'll have some kind of augmented reality accessory that's either an accessory to the iPhone or kind of like superset the iPhone by that point, and is the new must-have device.
It is a big question whether it would be the superset of the iPhone or just the accessory. You'd think it would start off being the accessory, and then maybe as engineering improved, it could replace it. As I'm hoping the Apple Watch is heading in that direction, although it's been quite a few years now.
Yeah, if the pace of the Apple Watch is an indication, it would probably still be an iPhone accessory at that point.
It took quite a while for the iPhone to be untethered from the computer, though. I mean, what did we get to, like iPhone OS 5 before you could update it just on the phone itself without iTunes?
Yeah, I think iOS 5 was the first one where like you got your device out of a box and it didn't just prompt you to plug into iTunes. You could actually use it.
Yeah. So we could see a similar timeline for Apple Glass, or I mean Apple Watch maybe is lagging slightly behind, but
we're close to that with Apple Watch now this year, with being able to basically set up. You still need an iPhone to set it up, but it doesn't have to be connected to the iPhone after the setup anymore. So
yeah, I mean you've got to see that it's on their list, and it's just there are more compelling features to add to it, I think. I mean, Apple likes that you have to have an iPhone, right? Because then you have to buy an iPhone as well as an Apple Watch.
And there's just some aspects of it that, I mean, like imagine trying to, I guess you could do it if you only had to do it once, but like signing into your Apple ID with the little screen on your watch. There's definitely some usability concerns that you'd have to get figured out.
Well, some third parties have developed like a keyboard on the watch, but yeah, with Apple's own stuff, if you tap on the little keyboard icon, it actually throws you to your phone to type the thing and then go back to the watch to continue the process.
Yeah.
You can scribble passwords though, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I will put it in the notes now that you are going to have predictions for us next show.
All right, and I'll try and I'll fill it in before the next show. Well, I'm James VDM on Reddit and Twitter.
And I'm Jellywoot on Reddit and Twitter.
And the show is posted on reddit.com/r/the_Apple_show.
All right, James's iPhone predictions.
James's doesn't need the second S.
That depends on who you ask.
Oh, really? Nah.
Okay.
Well, if you're asking me.
Okay, if you say so, that'll just be James apostrophe iPhone prediction. I've heard it said in the past that it depends on how you pronounce the word. Since you say James's with two S's, you put the extra S on the end. But if you say something like, this is my children's toy, even though it's a possessive of all the children, you only say S once, so you would just put the apostrophe on the end.
You don't say children's.
Right. But I think that, I don't know, there's competing standards for a lot of things in English, so I don't necessarily think there isn't necessarily a correct or incorrect way.
No. The purpose of it is to get across the idea or thought, and either one is doing that. And that's the point of language, so whenever someone tells me I've spelt something wrong, I say, well, did you understand it? Even though I never make spelling errors. And if they say yes, then I can say, well, that's fine then. No, I'm not that much of a dickhead.
If you can understand what the word was supposed to be, it's a correct spelling of the word.
That's right. But I think it's a fair take as well, even if it is a bit dickish to put it like that.
Yeah. Like, I'm a proponent of the Oxford comma, but there's many people who seem to be against it.
I think it fits in quite nicely.
Okay, good. We can continue to do the podcast then, if you agree with me.
Good to hear.